Welcome to the Top M&A Entrepreneurs. Today, my guest is Michael Loftus. Michael runs a company called Connor Landscaping. He's made 3 acquisitions to date, and I don't think he's slowing down. So welcome, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah. So tell us how this all started. I mean, what were you doing before you decided I want to acquire a company?
So I started mine from scratch, actually. So it's kind of contrary to a lot of these guys that start by buying.
Yeah.
Not intentionally. That's just the path I chose, was just go start it. And I kind of hit a wall with kind of growing what I had. And being in California, there's kind of some issues with growing organically that maybe weren't here 20 years ago, in the landscaping space, as far as, really a lack of good employees, and the space really getting smaller because there's a lot of big money coming into it.
Yeah. Because they like that reoccurring revenue.
It's huge. And I mean, that there's the good and bad in that, there's a lot of competition, but also, if you put together a pretty decent sized company, the multiples are pretty damn good.
What
Not
are
saying
they?
that I wanna, it depends. I mean, I've seen, um, I think once you get to obviously that million EBITDA number, that's always a big one. But I knew a guy that sold his company who was doing over a million with the right overhead. That's the other caveat. I've seen, like, we're like, oh, we make $1 million. I'm like, well, you don't have the right office staff. You're not paying a general manager 150K. I mean, there's a lot of, like, you gotta have your pieces in a row. But he had those, and I think he got over 5 million. I think he got 5.5.
Are you kidding?
Um,
5x multiple on a landscaping company. That's
yep.
amazing.
But he was big. He was doing, like, I don't know, like, maybe big for MySpace, like 10
Yeah.
million, making one, but a real one where, like, he literally was working 10 hours a week, not, I'm working 70 and I want to act like I make a million, but reality, you haven't hired the right people yet.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the employee shortage. Are you having difficulty finding people to do the jobs that you can
Um,
trust and do hard work?
there's definitely a shortage. I'm lucky I've retained a lot of employees that I had, especially the good ones. But yeah, there's just a huge, it's kind of like a invisible bidding war for people. Some of these companies, like, they need people, they're gonna, like, well, what are you getting paid? Well, I'm getting $17. I'll give you 18. And there's a lot of guys that will jump for that dollar.
Yeah.
Some of them will come to you and, like, give you basically an opportunity to keep them. Like, hey, like, this other guy literally could be at the gas station. Like, they don't care. Like, they know what they're looking for. And sometimes you can match it and keep them. Sometimes you're like, I can't pencil it. I understand if you got to go. It's not a personal thing. I think some of these guys take it personal. But in reality, these guys are on the knife's edge. Living in California, making that much money, I mean, you're right at the knife's edge, I
Yeah.
think. Um,
So when you started, you launched your own landscaping company just
mhm.
organically. And then what did you do? You said, hey, I'm not growing fast enough. I'm going to go start acquiring a couple others.
Yeah, so I think I did organic for the first 3 to 4 years, and learned a ton. Learned a lot about the industry. I mean, didn't know much about it before I got in, um, and did plenty of learning. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I had no idea Biz by Sell even existed. So I was like, I had a random thought. I'm like, I'm gonna just Google, like, landscape business for sale, and of course, Biz by Sell is like one of the top ones that comes up.
Yeah.
And I must have spent like 3 full days just looking at Biz by Sell, like, and not even just at landscaping, like how much the Jiffy Lube sells for, or, just these random, like, this roofing company, like, man, that's huge, like, holy shit, like, and then how much they want for these companies. I just thought it was fascinating. Um, and I don't have M&A experience, but I kind of was like, okay, well, what's the next step? And I saw a few little ones. I saw one that was around the corner for me. So just did the, fill out the NDA, talk to the broker, go meet the seller, that kind of stuff.
Well, how
And
big? Tell me about like the deal size. What was like? How
I
big was?
mean, that the first one, they were doing like $500,000 and making 100-ish.
Yeah. And knowing what you know, because you're in the industry, do you know that that was in the range?
Yeah, that was what I was looking for. I also didn't really want to go grab a bunch of debt before I really knew what I was doing. That's the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
I'm not debt averse, but I'm also kind of careful. Um, and so I was like, hey, I'm gonna look at something that I can actually swing by myself, and not, take on a ton of debt before I'm really ready for it.
Yeah. Let me get a sense of where were your size of your company at that point? Did you hit 1 million in top
Yeah,
line? Yeah.
yeah, I was like 1,300,000, 1,400,000.
Uh-huh.
And I did that all organic. And then, so this guy would have taken me to like 2 million bucks.
Yeah.
And I think he had like 6, 7 guys or something like that. Um, and then the other two were a little bit bigger than that one. I think they were doing like 7, 800, with some more people. So
Yeah.
I kind of still stayed in that ballpark, but definitely stayed under the group of guys that are getting those big multiples,
Yeah.
justifiably.
That's still what? 1, 2, 3 multiples.
Yeah, so yeah, we're in the nothing more than three.
Yeah. Nothing more
Um,
than 3. Okay.
yeah, at this size, and I think once you get to, I think 400, 500 grand, you're gonna start getting to the fours, fives.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's kind of a weird sweet spot. The big guys don't want to mess with these. Doesn't mean they're not good. And I think there's a lot of talk I've seen on Twitter, at least, about, don't buy small companies, don't buy small companies. I'm like, I agree, but if you're already in that industry, um, they're great as bolt-ons, but I wouldn't buy it individually. If that makes sense. Um,
Yeah,
but it
you're
works
buying a
if you.
job. I mean, the conversation I had with Michael Girdley, who you've already met. I mean, he bought a whole
Mhm.
bunch of hyper niche, small, $1 million top line companies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and mine were small, but they had amazing employees, just phenomenal people who still work for me. I think I kept, of the three companies I bought, I kept 90% of the recurring revenue accounts and 90% of the employees.
Yeah. So
Um,
all those 3 companies you looked at on Biz Buy Sell, you bought?
so two of them were Biz by Sell. The third one was Biz by Sell, but the broker reached out to me. So what I did, this is before I think they cracked down on Biz by Sell. This is probably 3 years ago. Yeah, something like that. Um, I actually I paid to have a spot on Biz by Sell, and what I did, this is like a wanted, like, hey, I'm looking for a commercial landscape business, EBITDA between, I forget what I put, like 80 grand to, a few hundred grand.
Yeah. A nice
If you,
classified. Yeah.
yeah, but I kind of like, I put it in the for sale section, so I kind of like backdoored in.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know. I was like, I'm gonna try it. Like, I have nothing to lose. It costs like 25 bucks to put in there. Like, see what happens. Sure enough, a guy who was selling his business in LA, the broker was selling a big property management company for a family, and one of the sons also had a landscape business who he is selling as well. But this was kind of like a small thing that he had to sell for them. He normally sells this bigger stuff, right? And he's just like, all right, like, we're gonna find, like, he's like, finds me. He's like, let's come meet. Let's see if it's a good match. And he was just like a no bullshit, no nonsense. Like, hey, this is a price. Does it work for you? I'm like, yeah, I think I beat him up like 50 grand or something and made an offer. And he's like, that's great. And he's like, we're not going to hassle you on it. Let's just get it done. So
Okay.
actually,
Oh, yeah. So that was just like they were trying to unload some assets for some bigger portfolio that where this just is like an add-on or something.
this was a small piece of it, of a family's kind of deal that they were kind of selling off. They weren't selling the real estate, but they were selling their businesses.
Yeah.
And he was kind of in charge of selling the big one, but this was just kind of a afterthought. And I kind of fit the bill. I already had the licensing, I already had all this stuff. I kind of was in industry already, which made it easier.
Yeah. How many clients came with that business?
Say like 50.
50 and
Something like that.
90% stayed with you?
Uh-huh.
Did you raise prices, keep the prices the same when you?
That's a good question. So I every year on all of my recurring revenue properties, which I think I have like 200 or so, we do a cost of living increase every year. It's
Yeah.
normally like 4 or 5%, which you got to do, because if you don't, it's just like human nature. Like if
Well,
if I
inflation's
hit you
eight
with,
percent.
right,
So
that
yeah.
too, and also fuel is through the roof, and I have like 24 trucks, so that adds up.
Yeah.
That my fuel bill went up like I think $6,000 a month. And
Jesus.
yeah, not doing anything different. Like we're running the same amount of trucks, same distances, everything.
Right. So when
Um,
you go take your truck to Quick Trip or something, now it's $100 to fill up to or
at
plus.
least, and it's all these trucks, and it's another thing. It's like being in business. Like they don't tell you
Yeah.
what to
So
do, right?
I'm like picturing this in my head. So there's a bidding war for good workers,
Hmm.
18, 19, $20. There's prices of gas and expenses just going up.
Hmm.
How are you keeping up, like charging more? And
Yep.
is there elasticity when you say, hey, customer, I know we charge you this month, but inflation just went up 8% in May, June. So
That is a good question. So I kind of all my contracts are they're 30-day contracts technically, but they're really sticky. No one gets rid of you. It's kind of like a Netflix subscription. You can get rid of it anytime you want, but how many people really do? Not many people. It's kind of the same mentality. It's yours to lose, kind of thing.
if you screw up, make mistakes,
You
dent a
stop.
car.
You got to like not show up. I mean, that's like how you lose them.
Yeah.
But when gas went, and so I'm in Orange County, California, and gas went from $4, which I was like, oh, this is like not cheap. When it went up, started going up to that 5.56 buck range, I was like, you know what? My gas bill has gone up $6,000. I'm not going to take a 6 grand bath on that. So what I ended up doing was, I mean, I just made this up. I took that delta and I divided it up through my properties and actually sent a little surcharge. So if, let's say, my monthly billing rate is $1,000 for a property, I went and said, hey, gas fuel surcharge as a line item underneath, $45. But I did that across all my accounts. I think I did like either $25 or $50, something like that. And I ended up making up that difference. And even my girl who runs my office, who's great, she's like, Mike, are you sure? Like, it's going to make these people mad and, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, listen, I'd rather deal with 4 or 10 of the 200 people that we do work for calling me and crying, or maybe one leaves or what. I'd rather deal with that than take a 6 grand bath and continue to, like, that's every month. That's not like a one-time deal.
Yeah, no kidding.
So we did that, and I had only one person even say anything to us, and he was like, hey, is this temporary? I'm like, yeah, until gas goes back to a normal rate, which should, I don't know, $4.
Yeah.
So
For at least another 3 years.
so
Yeah.
it ended up being that I think we end up billing like $6,500 more just on these little fuel charge deals, but they're spread out. So the client's like, yeah, $50, I get it, gas is crazy, no, not a big deal, like, no problem.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, like, you're just gonna lose money. Like, you're just not gonna make it. So that's how I've kind of kept up with it. And we just did our cost of living increase. I think we did like 4.5%. It's you're battling a lot of different fronts. You know what I mean? But I think that's any business. I don't think
Yeah.
that's unique
No,
to what I'm doing.
yeah. So how did that was your first acquisition to
Yeah.
bolt on to your, did
Mhm.
you do anything with whoever was running the legal or accounting? Did those come with the business?
So they had, they had an account that they've been using forever, who just was nice, but just really slow. Which I actually found a woman that does all my accounting stuff now, who's really quick, really good, has a good team with her. That kind of like, I fold these into mine. So basically, like, everyone, it's an asset sale. Everyone gets fired on Friday. They're hired by me on Monday. Um, and they're basically employees of my LLC now. So I don't really take on their LLC when I buy the company.
You just buy the
Um,
assets. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, rehire all the people, even though the guys don't feel like they got fired. Cause I mean, it's just a legality. Like we change. Okay. You're on my payroll
Yeah.
now. So I've had a really good woman doing the accounting for me the last few years, and attorney wise, I have my dad's had a business attorney for 25 years who's really good and
Yeah.
pretty
Who's your
competent.
dad?
My dad,
Yeah. Is it Ed Loftus?
Ed Loftus, is my dad.
Yeah, because I noticed the connection in there. I was just going to make a point that a lot of people go in wanting to buy these businesses and thinking these attorneys and legal team are excited about selling it. They're not, because they're actually losing a client.
Hmm.
So they may drag their feet or not want to. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen attorneys screw these people left and right on different deals. I mean, I had one at literally the 5 yard line, probably 6 months ago. Great tuck in right down the street from me. Everything me and the seller had good connection. The numbers lined up. My business is like 8 times as big as his, so the seller note wasn't a big deal. But he brought this attorney in who didn't like the collateral, and that was enough for him to not do the whole deal.
Yeah.
Even though I even let him speak to the 3 other sellers that I had completely paid back, which I didn't want to do. But if that's what it was going to take to get the deal done, like, here's the guy's names and numbers, give him a call, and
So
that
this,
ended up not being enough.
yeah. So this first deal that you did added whatever, like 400,000 top line, something like that.
500, yeah.
500,000 top line. So you're now right around
2 million, close.
$2 million. And then EBITDA was proportional, the same.
Yep, because I still didn't have office staff at that point, so I was still doing everything by myself. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool. And was there kind of a bump in the road where it was kind of crazy for a couple of months, 3, 4 months?
Oh yeah, I was shitting bricks, man. I wired all the money I'd ever saved, to be quite honest with you, to have as the down. And but
Have
that's
you
my
made your money back?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And that's just my personality. I just go all in. I'm gonna go for it. And I was like, I'm not gonna have this not work for a lack of effort. That's never been my issue. So I just went in there and I'm like, told the guys, I'm like, hey, the guys are working there. I'm like, hey, just give me a chance. I know you don't know me, but give me a shot, and I think you guys are gonna be surprised. So, and they did, and it all worked out, and then everybody stayed, and I've kept most of the business and most of the guys. And
did you reach out to all the clients and say, hey, there's a new owner? And
yeah, we sent out a letter, kind of informing them, hey, we've acquired the business, blah, blah, blah. We retained all the employees, and we always make sure we put that in there. If you'd like to do an on-site visit, meet and talk, like, please reach out, blah, blah, blah. And, of the 3, I mean, I had 10% of all the clients like actually care enough to want to meet me. To be honest, it's just, you don't want to like think just because that's what you do that it's like really people care about it. I'm kind of an invisible service. Like, someone owns like a $5 million commercial building. We come and we mow the lawns, we keep everything clean. You're kind of an invisible service that they just kind of pay. It's like electricity or
you
water.
Don't notice it until somebody's not doing it.
Exactly. And you want to be invisible, to be honest. Some other clients are more high touch, like they want to talk to you, they want to walk the property and all this stuff. But most of my clients aren't that way. But also when they call us, we're all over it, and handle it. So I don't want to like force myself to meet with them if they don't care enough to meet,
Yeah, they just like, hey man, as long as you keep up the service, that's it, right?
And that's mostly what we get from people. Like, hey, that sounds good, man. Like, we need, your W-9, and we need I forget, there's another few other pieces of paper. We also need, to be additionally insured through your insurance policies and little paperwork stuff, but not like, oh my gosh, you're the new owner. Like,
this is
so different.
A dramatic change. This is gonna,
Most of them don't care, and I really overestimated that. I was like, what if they leave and all this stuff? And after the first one, I realized I'm like, people don't care that much. I'm the one that actually cares because I just wired all the money that I have. But yeah, most people just don't really care.
Did you offer them anything else like seller financing or some other thing, and they just didn't want to take it?
So no. I did seller finance on all my deals.
Oh, okay. So
I don't.
what was that split? What did that look like?
So
First one. Yeah.
I think it was like 25% seller finance.
Okay.
And it's been about that, or yeah, around that for all of them. So
And the rest
um,
cash.
mhm,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So how did that second deal go? Where'd you find that?
The second one was the one that the guy found me on Biz by Sell when he had to like offload everything.
Oh,
That
okay.
was the second one,
Okay.
which was in LA, which is a little bit north of us. And then the third one was from Biz by Sell, um, which was, I mean, they all were good deals for like different reasons, and they all had a different problem too that I had to solve once you got in, that you didn't find that you there's no way you could have known in the due diligence.
Yeah.
Um,
So that is, I had a mentor tell me it's like there's a puzzle in front of you. You just got to figure out what the puzzle and solve where the pieces go.
yeah,
Because every business has, like you just said, its own problem. You just have to solve that.
yeah, and I think when you solve it also is important. I think people don't talk about that enough. Like, let's say the last business I bought, um, the guy was great, everything was fine. Got in the middle of it, and the squirrel that was in there was he was paying these guys on Saturdays, and he was paying them cash to work on Saturday. That's a
And that
problem for
wasn't in the books.
that wasn't talked about in any meeting, anything. But we're already in this thing. I'm already in, so it's kind of a figure it out thing. So, and knowing how these kind of employees are, coming in and deciding I'm going to change everything right now, or I'm going to change something to do with your check or your money, you could easily lose all your employees in a day, in a week. Like you,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
your key people, like they could leave. So of course, the next day you'd love to like stop paying cash, make sure everyone's on payroll, just like everything else. But you kind of have to have more strategy. So what I was like, in the course of a year, by the year from today, I want to try to be off this cash deal. I want to make up. So I gotta get to know the guys. That's the most important thing. Make
You
sure that
you inherited the problem, you saw it, you knew it was a problem, but you didn't
Mhm.
do anything about it so that they built trust in you that you're going to fix it.
Immediately, I didn't do it immediately just because it's already a change for these guys to have a new owner, to have office staff that they never met. To they're just kind of a little bit skittish. But so I kind of was like, first things first, like these guys need to know who I am, know that I'm approachable, that I'm not, the scary white boss. I'm just another guy. I'm just happen to be your boss.
You
And
speak
I'm gonna
Spanish?
up in us.
Yeah.
Yeah, enough.
Yeah.
My landscape Spanish is really, really good. Kitchen Spanish not as good. Talking shit Spanish, like level 10. Um, um, but so I realized there was a problem, and I was like, you know what? Over the course of the year, I want to transition out of that. I'll find a way. And sometimes you almost have to just blame other reasons. Like, even though in the reality is, it's like, hey, we need to not be using cash. Like, everything needs to be above board. I don't play games like that. We're going to do everything on payroll. If you worked extra hours, it's going to be overtime. It's going to be time and a half. I have to pay workers' comp on every dollar of that payroll. I just don't mess around with that because I've worked way too
You
hard.
can be getting a lot more trouble, especially if they got hurt on a Saturday.
All of that stuff. So
And
I've worked way too hard and put too much money in
yeah,
to like have to not do it the right way. That's
I
the way
mean,
I look at it.
really, the previous owner was actually screwing them, paying him cash. Like, okay, you're making cash in the short term, but if you got wounded, hurt, hey,
Problem.
I have no knowledge of that, right? He could back
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a plethora of problems with that. So what I ended up doing was, I forget, at a certain point, I was like, hey guys, like, the accountants, they're not letting me do the cash thing anymore. We have to put it on payroll. I'm sorry, man. I would love to do it, but I blame like the accountants. The accountants will do whatever I tell them to do.
Right.
But I'm just kind of like making me not be the bad guy on this one. Make the invisible person that they don't know. And they kind of came around to it, but they trusted me. They knew who I was. They knew I wasn't, trying to screw them.
Did you
And
ask for their input to help solve it, or you
I
waited kind of?
so I waited, and then I thought about how to approach it, and then I approached the guy who was basically the account manager, kind of like the ringleader guy of that group. And I told him about it. I'm like, hey, this accountant's really breathing down my neck. We really have to get out of the cash thing because they're really on me about it. So, I just want to let you guys know in the next few weeks, we're going to have to transition that over. And he was like, I get it. No problem. Yeah, let's just make
Did
sure
you
we get
lose
the hours.
anybody?
No.
How did how is that coming out? Was that cash coming out of the business account? But where was it going? I traced it doing an audit. Hey, we're paying employees.
Okay. So how was he doing it?
Yeah, I see was how he's doing it. It was just taking cash out of the bank account and paying him ahead. But somebody's got to write an invoice for that cash going out. Where's that expense going? Because he could have been just putting it in his pocket.
Yeah, I think what he was taking it out of money that he had paid himself, which is stupid because it's like you're pulling out cash after tax. It's stupid. I was lucky. So I have part of my business that I'll renovate homes sometimes.
Yeah.
For landscaping. I love it because there's no accounts receivable. And sometimes those clients will pay you in cash, which does help with that stuff, but it was just a pain. I don't like dealing with it at all. I'd much rather have a check for everything, let everything be on the books. It just having two sets of books, it's just a mess. I don't like doing it.
Yeah.
So every business I bought has a different problem, but also is great for a different reason. So that's my experience.
So where are you at now? The top line?
We're about 4.5, 4.3 or something like that.
Yeah. And then what about
500,000? 500, 600 in that range.
Yeah.
We'll see how the end of the year plays out. But
do you have plans to entertain private equity offers if you get to the 1 million? Or what do you want to do?
I don't think so. I really enjoy it. I like I'm not in a hurry to get big and have an EBITDA and sell and exit. Yeah. Have an exit as exciting as that sounds to have an exit. I don't know.
What would you do next? I mean,
that's a great question.
Yeah,
that's actually a bigger question. It's not. Most people are like, well, what about the money? I'm like, well, that's interesting, but what's a better thing I can do with my money, my after-tax money? And also, I'm running my lifestyle through my business. So a lot of things that I'm paying for are pre-tax.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, if there's an interview with that Tiger 21 guy that runs that's one of the biggest masterminds. He said, usually entrepreneurs make way much more money staying in their business that they grew, because once they sell and try to become an investor, they usually lose their money. And the people in his group are worth 100 million or more billion. They are better entrepreneurs than they are investors.
Absolutely. And I can only speak for myself. I know my niche. I know what I'm doing. That doesn't mean I know how to do a bunch of other stuff, or know, which crypto to buy or which real estate to buy, or, all this stuff. I know my thing, my weird small niche, and staying in my lane has worked. So I'm not really going to change that. And, I think it'd have to be a huge number for me to think about getting out, and even then it's if you're making, let's say $2 million EBITDA, and they're going to give you, let's say $10 million, okay, so you get your 10, you pay at least 3 in tax, maybe 4 in California.
You pay 50.
Probably 4.
Yeah.
So let's say you're a genius and you walk away with $6 million. What am I going to put that into that's going to give me the same returns that I have? Nope. It's just not. And in my mind, it's okay, I could have run my business for 3 more years or 4 and have my money back, so it's kind of, I don't know. So you're kind of battling that, I think, back and forth, but I'm a long ways from that. So from even making that decision, but I have had a few people ask me to buy me out, it was kind of cool, but I won't do it.
Yeah.
But,
so now that you've bought 3 businesses, you started one organically and you bought 3 businesses, you've got a reputation for doing acquisitions. Are people coming to you now with, hey, I got this landscaping company, it's doing 1 million, top line 2 million. Are you interested?
So I have. It's kind of cool. I've gone on to Twitter recently, into the small business Twitter world, which is really neat. It's really cool to see other people doing stuff and just being kind of transparent about how that's going. Because being an entrepreneur and also acquisition guy or searcher, as people are saying, it's not. There's not a lot of community, right? It's kind of like you're out on your own, and it's like
You're on your
figure it
own.
out.
Yeah. Michael Girdley said like you're alone. I mean, until you figure out you're hanging around with other business owners, you're alone.
Mm-hmm. You really are. And it's just a different path. It's very different from most people's how they do things or how they look at things. But yeah, I've had some really cool connections on Twitter, different brokers, and it was pretty. I think I've had like at least a few deals got DM'd to me before they got listed to like take a look at. Which was really cool. I mean, I was like, well, I think that's worth having a Twitter, like just because of like 3 messages, right?
So this is happening because you post on Twitter.
I guess. I mean, what I just post about like how I've done acquisitions. I've done some of these podcasts and talk about it a little bit, and people kind of like tag me and stuff like, hey, you got to get connected to this guy, or it's really cool because it is kind of its own weird slice of Twitter. It's like this just small.
I guess I got to get more used to it. I have an account and I post there automatically from all my posts, but I'm not getting that kind of traction. Yeah.
I don't know. I laughed about it. I had a friend who was like, man, like another business owner. He's like, hey, you got to get on Twitter, man. Like, you love it, all this stuff. I'm like, dude, I don't care what Kanye West is saying on his Twitter or whatever. I just I don't care about it. I don't care to see the news. I don't need that. So he's like, no, it's all, there's a bunch of business guys and they talk about different ideas and this kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I'll try it.
What's the name of the thread?
So it's not really a thread. It's really kind of like this big, I'd say like probably a few thousand people that are, it's basically SMB Twitter. So
SMB Twitter.
Yeah. And if you go like, there's a few guys that you could go find that are kind of like, that are connected to almost everybody. Girdley is definitely one of them.
Yeah, Girdley's. It's funny. I talked to him, and he's not using LinkedIn. I go, LinkedIn is like the B2B social media platform. There's 58 million businesses listed on B2B, and he's in the acquisition business. So, I
think you'd be surprised how many deals happen on Twitter. It's like unbelievable. Like you would be like, "Are you kidding me?" Deals are happening on Twitter all the time.
I guess I got to jump into it. Like,
yeah, I even have another guy that I talk to frequently, who was at a big law firm who ended up leaving his law firm and now started his own law firm doing just based around small acquisition stuff, small to middle market. And I think I haven't spoken with them yet, but they're so packed they don't even know what to do, and they're not marketing. Like they're literally, it's almost all Twitter people.
Wow.
Which
He's
is nuts.
Acquiring law firms or just acquiring anything?
No. He started a law firm that they cater to guys doing acquisitions.
Oh, okay.
So they want to find like a searcher who's like, hey, like I want to buy this plumbing company in Des Moines. Like, can you help me out? And they will basically help them with all the paperwork and kind of walk through the process.
Yeah. That's cool.
I don't know. It's interesting. So there's a lot of opportunity on Twitter, I think, and a lot of like business happening, which you wouldn't guess. But definitely stuff happening.
Let's say that, you idolize the Warren Buffett where, who comes to tap dances into work, loves what he does, reads for 4 hours, takes a few phone calls and goes get a bunch of Cokes and goes home. Where are you at with kind of structuring that where you have a bunch of general managers and you're working, the time you want to work?
So I'm at a really good spot right now. So I have my office staff. My girls are very good. They're paid well, but they're loyal and they kick ass. So my office stuff, phone calls, all that stuff is all the paperwork is done by them, which takes a ton off my plate. And then I have basically like area managers for like the 3 main areas that we do work in. And I'd say I'm working like 15 hours a week.
You're working 15 hours a week? Okay.
So, and that goes back to your EBITDA number, right?
Yeah.
There's some people who are the same top line as me, but they try to say, oh, well, I make 800K or I make like 750. I'm like, well, that's interesting, but you're literally working 60 hours a week and you don't have the right people. You haven't hired the right people to be in the right spots. And it's not just about like, I want to work less. It's more about, I got a lot of runway. So growing to that 10 million will be a lot easier if I have the time to actually do it. Right.
Yeah.
Like I'm meeting with a seller on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen if you're driving around to locations checking on people.
Exactly. So I'm lucky I'm in this like weird middle ground where I have a lot of runway and, I know that there's going to be an acquisition easy in the next year. I'm going to buy something. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe a bigger one with an SBA loan. I don't know, but I'm going to be ready for it and have the bandwidth to do it. Because if you don't have the bandwidth, like you can't do acquisition. Like you literally, if you're, the water is up to here, how are you going to grow? Like you don't have the energy or the time.
Yeah. So who do you go to? I know your dad, is he in private equity or what's he do?
So he owns his own businesses. And he has probably three or four.
Yeah. Do you go to him for advice, inspiration? And
yeah, me and him are very, very close. Well, he lives 10 minutes down the road. Also my younger brother, really freaking smart, who hasn't done his first acquisition yet, but he's not far off.
Yeah. What does he want to do it in? What industry?
He wants to get into something reoccurring, like that reoccurring revenue, kind of like how I have the maintenance, commercial maintenance.
What about pool supply stuff?
Pools are tough.
Tough?
Pools, like the margin isn't very good. There's not a lot of add-on stuff. Like pool construction, there's money in it. It's just I don't know that I'd pay a multiple for a construction business.
Yeah.
That you have to keep bidding and winning, and especially a construction business when technically we are going into a recession. So
I've already heard like 10 people this morning say technically we are in a recession.
I mean, what is it? 2 months with the negative GDP. So
yeah. So what does that mean for you? I mean, people when they start cutting back in a recession, where are you in the process of like, okay, we're gonna cut our gym memberships, we're gonna cut landscaping, we're going to cut our ice cream social Fridays, right?
So I am one of the last things, I'll be honest with you, because if you own a $5 million commercial building, you might not re-slurry the parking lot this year, right? You're like, that's good enough, but you're still going to mow the lawn and keep the weeds out and keep it clean.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a $5 million building. Like, how do you not pay the guy $1,000 to keep it clean?
Yeah. That doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Right. So I think that I'm one of the last people to get cut with the maintenance stuff, which makes it so attractive. And that's why I think so much private equity money is chasing it, because it's just really diverse and it's really recession proof, super recession proof. So I feel pretty good about it. I mean, I know a lot of people are freaking out about the recession or maybe farther than that, but I mean, this is why I got into this business, is to be ready for these. So a lot of people, COVID, crushed them and all stuff. And I literally didn't change anything. We did the same stuff.
Just kept going. Yeah.
Kept going.
Do you, when you go have your people do the job, how do they know, like the property manager is checking to do their job? Do you send them pictures? Do they visit once a month? Or how do you know that happens and you feel comfortable? Like, hey, here's your schedule to clean the bathroom. Are you on schedule?
So luckily we don't clean bathrooms, because that would be.
Well, I was just kind of making an example.
That would be a whole different.
I always walk in if you walk in a restaurant and
they have the
schedule there. You got. Yeah.
So normally property managers are stretched too thin to be checking properties that they don't have issues with. That's my experience. So if there's a squeaky wheel, they're going to go. And my goal is to have our guys do a good job where there isn't any squeaking wheels and they just pay the bills. So it's pretty infrequent that I have a project manager say, hey, I'm at the property and it doesn't look very good. I mean, I get one of those emails once a year, maybe. It's very infrequent, but also I pay my guys well. I try to retain the best people I can, and I just don't cut corners on stuff. I don't like, hey, like this property really needs 2 guys for the whole day to work on it. I'm not like, well, just send one so I can like make more money. In reality, I'm making more problems for myself because the property is gonna start looking like shit.
Yeah. And that'll end up biting you in the long run.
Exactly. It's just short-term thinking, and I'm a long-term player. I don't.
Are you in any masterminds? No,
Not in any. Eventually I want to get in YPO. I really want to go in YPO. I have a few friends that are older that have been in it that are really big on it. But
I'm not in Vistage. Have you heard of the Vistage?
I've heard of Vistage, and then what's the other one? It's another one that's like for smaller than YPO.
I have the name written down. I know who you're.
Vistage is definitely one of them I've heard about. I've thought about it. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on one way or the other. I knew YPO is a really good one that I've heard from personal people that I know, that they really talk highly of it. But yeah, I mean.
Well, man, I got to tell you, this is like, it seems like it's swimming along. You're working on your 4th acquisition from your original platform company, and some good advice, man. Thanks. Good real world. So I really appreciate the time you spent with me.
Yeah, man. It's journey, and it keeps me on my toes, and I have fun with it. So I think as long as you're having fun and making money, keep doing it.
Yeah. So you want to plug anything? I happen to like, you want to plug your Connor landscaping and
So just my Twitter. My Twitter is Sign the Fronts. It's kind of an homage to my dad. My dad would always come home and say, hey, sign a lot of the fronts of the checks today, because it means he's paying people and not getting paid.
Yeah.
So I'm just signing the fronts, Mike. So I kind of was like, oh, that's actually kind of a funny little one. So that's what I made my Twitter handle is Sign the Fronts.
Sign the Fronts at Sign the Fronts. Nice. Mm-hmm. Michael, thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care.
All right. See ya.
Bye.